Buddhism is a world religion founded by the Buddha in ancient India. Buddhists seek wisdom, meaning, inner peace, and freedom from greed, hatred, and ignorance. Mutually sustaining life, a Buddhist call to a troubled world.
As the light of a small candle spreads from one to another in succession, so the light of Buddha's compassion passes from one mind to another endlessly.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. Professor Charles Prebish of Pennsylvania State University, one of the foremost specialists on American Buddhism, coined the term silent Sangha. Sangha originally referred to the assembly of monks and nuns, but today, especially in the United States, it has come to mean a group that includes the lay people who gather to study and practice Buddhism. Professor Prebish has made an interesting observation that colleges are now serving as a kind of a Sangha for students interested in learning about Buddhism. He ingeniously called it silent, since the students are obviously not going to Buddhist temples or meditation centers, but are still able to get sound guidance about Buddhism. This is reflected in the significant growth in the number of colleges and universities in the last 30 years that now offer courses on Buddhism, from Buddhism 101 to PhD programs in Buddhist studies. As of a few years ago, it was reported that in a 2-year period, 88 doctorate-level dissertations focusing on Buddhism were written by individuals attending U.S. universities. This likely surpasses that of the Buddhist countries of Asia. Today, Professor Linda Penkower, who teaches Buddhism at the University of Pittsburgh, is here to tell us a bit more about Buddhist studies in the U.S. Well, Professor Penkower, it's a real pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
And I'd like to begin by asking, how did you get started in your formal study of Buddhism?
I had just happened to take a course in Buddhism while I was an undergraduate, and I was hooked.
So once you got hooked, where did you do your studies, and especially your graduate program?
I finished up my undergraduate work in philosophy with a minor in Buddhism, and then I did my graduate work at Columbia University in New York.
I see.
Columbia at that time was just moving, was one of the first universities to move the study of Buddhism out of area studies departments and into religious studies departments, and we were very fortunate to have 4 Buddhologists with whom I studied.
I see. 4 Buddhologists. Who are Buddhologists?
I am a Buddhologist.
Okay.
A Buddhologist is anyone who studies in a scholarly fashion Buddhist studies.
Okay. And so what changes have you seen in the development of interest among students in American universities, more specifically at University of Pittsburgh?
I've been teaching for over 15 years now, and quite frankly, the level of interest in Buddhism has always been very high. I think that most students coming out of their parents' home for the first time are interested in figuring out who they are and what they want to be, independent of their parents' ideas, and Buddhism has always been very attractive in helping kids figure out a little bit about how they want to present themselves to the world.
I see.
However, in recent times, I think that students come to Buddhism with a greater understanding and perhaps a greater exposure. There are many more books, for example, popular books as well as academic books that are available to them. They come through anime, they come through kung fu movies, comic books, how-to business manuals, the visual arts. And more students are traveling. So they come to it with some knowledge often of Asia, for example, and not just as an isolated incident of a topic in religion.
And of course, recently Buddhism is perceived as one of the American religions. It's no longer so foreign as before, and with more and more people who are Buddhists, Richard Gere, for example. So I would say that young people look at Buddhism as an American religion. Would you say that?
Absolutely. I think that there is, and absolutely, I think that we can see that not just in American religion, but people are interested in it as a contemporary religion and not something that's just historically in the background.
That's an important point, yeah.
But kids come, they're interested in meditation, they're interested in the philosophy, they've looked at some of it, they know some Buddhists, they've seen some Buddhists. The Dalai Lama, for example, has been to America, etc.
Especially Dalai Lama. Yeah.
Especially the Dalai Lama.
Now, how do you, as a professor of religion, Buddhologist, feel about this kind of activities or involvement on a popular level?
I think whatever draws a student in to take a serious look at Buddhism is perfectly all right. There's certainly students who come to Buddhism with more serious ideas about wanting to know what enlightenment is, etc. But I think that we have to communicate, and if this is an entry for them into the world of Buddhism, I think it's terrific.
What are some of the courses that you're teaching at the University of Pittsburgh?
Well, I think that, to keep students' interest, and I think religion in general has a more serious side and a lighter side. It has a theoretical side and it has a practical side, and how one lives one's life. Theory is not divorced from how we behave.
Yes.
And so in my courses, I teach a general introduction to Buddhism, and I teach an introduction to East Asian Buddhism in particular. And I also teach a very popular Chan Zen meditation course or meditative tradition course. And we, for example, go to a Zen monastery and spend a day, sometimes overnight, at a local Zen monastery to do that.
Wow, interesting. What are some of the, I think perhaps we have already touched upon this, but what are some of the motivations for taking interest in Buddhism?
I think students come from remarkably different angles when they come to a class like this. As I said before, a lot of students are very interested in looking for a religious tradition or a philosophy of life, if you will, a way to behave that will complement their own ideas and their own Western tradition, the Judeo-Christian traditions that they may have come out of. Other students are interested in it as part of the larger picture of the cultural heritage of Asia. Some of students are interested in it as a new religion in America, for example. So there are many different reasons for students to come and take a look at these courses.
So when they take these courses, what are some of the most often asked questions that they bring to you?
I think students have a real interest in the enlightenment experience.
Enlightenment. Okay.
They really want to know what it feels like, what it looks like to be enlightened. And unfortunately, on that particular regard, I'm on the same side of the desk as they are. But I think that is one of the biggest driving forces for students. They're also interested in questions of, good and evil, right and wrong, the ethical questions that are guided by Buddhist ideas in juxtaposition, for to what they've been taught up until now.
I see. So now we talked about what attracts them. What are some of the problems that they may have with Buddhism? What are the difficult questions that they encounter as they study Buddhism?
Remarkably, I think that students are very open to this idea of impermanence, to the idea of not having a soul. There's very little resistance, I find, to that, and there's very little.
Really?
Yeah, I'm always surprised they start, of course, by filtering Buddhist ideas through their own ethical and religious understandings and systems, but somewhere about midway through a course, you usually see a change, and you can see them starting to think about Buddhism in its own terms rather than in their own in their terms.
I see. So you mentioned that some of the students are there to look at Buddhism as a way of helping them personally. 18, 19, 20-year-olds are often going through difficult times. And have you seen any evidence of Buddhism helping their search?
I think as part of the human experience, Buddhism certainly is a contributor to how we live in this world. Unfortunately, of course, in the academy, it is not our position to be proselytizers or... so what my job is to accurately explain Buddhism to them, to get them involved in an understanding of what it means for a Buddhist to be Buddhist, but certainly not in the classroom setting, to help them figure out their own ideas.
You must then refer students to the centers or
Students
temples
are constantly asking where they can go locally to meditate. And certainly I've had students who have gone on to spend some time in a monastery. I've had students who have gone on to graduate school in the academy. So get both.
Okay. So what are your thoughts about the future of Buddhism in the U.S.?
I think Buddhism is quite healthy in the United States. I think students are starting to explore greater and greater topics in the area.
I see. Good. So you're optimistic.
I certainly am.
Okay. Well, Professor Pankar, thank you for joining us and for giving us an overview of what's going on in American universities. Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
As heard in our discussion with Professor Pankar, we are witnessing a thriving level of interest in the study of Buddhism at American universities. I would therefore like to encourage those interested to take advantage of the existence of Silent Sangha. You will be able to learn something about one of the three world religions in an atmosphere of objectivity and openness. And when you do, it's my sincere wish that you will also be touched by the spirit of compassion as expressed in today's opening passage. As the light of a small candle spreads from one to another in succession, so the light of Buddha's compassion passes from one mind to another endlessly. In our next show, we will explore the fascinating topic of the interaction of psychology and psychotherapy and Buddhism. See you then.
We at Bukkyo Dendo Kyokai pursue peace and happiness for people around the world. We have published the Buddhist teachings into 41 languages and donated our publication to hotels and other facilities in 55 countries. We would like to share the Buddhist teachings with people around the world. That's our mission. Visit our website for more information